This is the theory film analysis for Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by Shea. So let's start with a background and summary. This film was released in 2005 and was directed by Mike Newell, who was brought into the project on Prisoner of Azkaban, and he was brought in because the creators wanted a darker director, someone that could portray it the way they really wanted it to be portrayed. And this specific film follows Harry in his 4th year as he faces many challenges following his name randomly and mysteriously shooting out of the Goblet of Fire, and this leads him to be picked as a Triwizard competitor, which is a competition that he was forbidden to enter because of an age limit due to the many dangerous and lethal tasks, including the dragons and the mermaids, followed by the maze at the end. And the movie also foreshadows the rise of Voldemort through Harry's dreams until it inevitably happens at the end of the film. So the first theory I wanted to mention was archetypal theory. And the first archetype I wanted to point out was color archetypes. Color can bring out specific emotions, and it's often used to convey feelings and thoughts. One of the colors that stood out to me was the use of yellow in the film, and yellow represents enlightenment and wisdom, which is true of Cedric Diggory, who is a Hufflepuff competitor. And although yellow is the colors of Hufflepuff, the character itself really represents wisdom and enlightenment. Throughout the film, his actions greatly impact Harry and greatly enlighten him down to his last breath and his death in general. They teach Harry valuable lessons. And in this specific scene, he is enlightening Harry as to how to open the egg. He is tipping him off on the method he used to figure out the egg, which will help Harry move on to the next task. The next scene that I wanted to point out where yellow was used for enlightenment and wisdom was this scene here where Harry is seen opening the golden egg for the first time. You can see that inside the golden egg, which is the part containing the information, is glowing a bright yellowish color, and I think that was important to show that inside is something that will enlighten Harry. The next color I wanted to point out was black. Black can often portray mystery or evil intent, and the first one I wanted to point out was mystery, and the characters that I thought really portrayed mystery are Draco Malfoy and Severus Snape, both of which have very little screen time throughout the film, and they're very unexplained characters. You don't really get a backstory or anything to explain their actions or the intent behind what they say and do. Now on the other end of the black side would be evil, which is very clearly portrayed through Voldemort, who is always seen wearing this black robe, and he is very much the poster child for evil. A lot of his actions have evil intent, if not all of them, and you can see this when he kills Cedric Diggory, or rather tells Wormtail to kill Cedric Diggory just because of the sight of him. There is no real meaning behind killing Cedric Diggory. That's just pure evil intent. He shows no hesitation to order this, and no remorse afterwards. He even steps on Cedric Diggory and moves his face around with his foot, not even his hand, but that's how beneath him Cedric Diggory is. Another person that portrays evil, in my opinion, would be Lucius Malfoy, who often uses words to attack others, especially his son, who he also sometimes will be physical with. He is a main follower of Voldemort, and you can tell that he really believes in it, and he's only there because he believes in it and not because of a greater intent for him or his family. If anything, it just causes more harm for his family. The next color I wanted to point out was red, which is often associated with passion or blood. It can also be associated with anger and other things, but I thought that in this specific film, it portrays mostly passion through Harry. He's always wearing red, which is the Gryffindor colors, and I think that there was a reason that Harry, the main character, was a Gryffindor, and there was a reason that that red was associated with Gryffindor, because it really shows a great use of passion throughout this film, with all his actions that he makes. He always puts his all into it. You can tell he's very passionate about everything that he does. And even more so when he is battling Voldemort later on, you can see that the spell he uses is in fact a red spell. And you can tell that he puts everything he has into this spell, even using both hands on his wand and taking a large stance against Voldemort. You can see that he's really like putting everything he has into the spell. And bringing up this scene, I think it's important to note that Voldemort's spell was in fact green, which is the color of Avada Kedavra, which is the killing curse. And it seems kind of ironic since the color of green is often associated with growth, which I think is actually, it actually makes sense, considering Voldemort himself truly believes that through the killing curse, he can achieve a lot of growth as a being, as a person. He can achieve a lot of growth within his followers and a lot of power through that. The last color archetype I wanted to point out is dark, and I think that this is shown throughout the whole film, especially the beginning credits. We all know Warner Bros. Is normally a vibrant blue and yellow color, but throughout this film, the idea of having a dark theme was really important, to the point where they changed the logo in this specific film. They used that to automatically show you that this film is more of a darker film, especially compared to the other Harry Potter films. This is one of the first ones that shows how dark it truly is, with no saturation in it at all. It is just a gray color with a black background. And most of the scenes where there is a loss of hope, mostly the tasks, are very dark tasks and very dark scenes. You can see that afterwards, once the task is complete and Harry has made it through, that he and his friends celebrate, and the scene itself gets a lot more vibrant and light, and you can tell that it's almost like a weight has been lifted off their shoulders and they can breathe. The only time that this doesn't happen is after the third task, when he brings Cedric's body back with him. You can tell that the scene doesn't get any lighter. It stays dark and no one celebrates with him. They automatically notice that Cedric is laying there lifeless, and it becomes a scene of great despair. The next archetype I wanted to talk about was symbol or image archetypes. Symbols can be unconscious representations of feelings that carry a message we don't even notice until we're looking for them. This is true of water. I didn't notice the use of water until I rewatched this a second time, and I really noticed that the second task here, where they went underwater and had to rescue their loved ones at the bottom, they were told that there was just a treasure of swords waiting for them at the bottom, and they had an hour to look for it. You can see here that the loved ones are tied up to the bottom of the lake, and here they appear very lifeless and they don't move very much, like at all, just their hair. They don't breathe until they reach the top, like to the surface of the water. That's when they finally take a breath and they appear to move as if they weren't frozen for a couple hours. And I think this really showcases the life aspect. Now, moving on to the birth aspect of water, I wanted to point out when Voldemort was dropped into a cauldron of water, you can see here he obtains the fetal position, which I think is very important to the birth aspect of this scene. He is very much taking a weak fetal portrayal in this scene. You can see he's almost lifeless, very weak, but he does end up, after this ceremony of sorts, he ends up gaining back his power and becoming his true self. The next thing I wanted to point out was fire, which is a symbol of knowledge, and I noticed that it was used when Sirius Black and Harry had a discussion. You could tell Sirius was trying to just gain knowledge out of Harry and figure out what was going on and why Harry was maybe having these dreams. You can tell that he's asking a lot of questions and they're just trying to communicate so he can understand Harry's dreams. Fire was also used in the first task of the Triwizard Tournament, which had fire-breathing dragons, which were guarding the egg that contained the knowledge for the second task. I think this was important, and they used this on purpose because they could have used another beast to guard this egg. However, they decided that a dragon was the best option for them. Now, another symbol or image that I wanted to include was the serpent, which can represent evil. And I think that Nagini showed this in a really good way. Nagini is Voldemort's pet snake, and in a way represents Voldemort in general, which I think just further proves how evil Voldemort is. And you can see Nagini in Harry's dreams. She slithers past the old Muggle caretaker to let Voldemort know that he is present, and Voldemort ends up killing him, which is evil. The next serpent image I wanted to point out was in the Dark Mark, which is the mark of Voldemort and his followers, which only proves that Voldemort is really represented by a snake. And here in this scene, he is using the Dark Mark to contact the rest of the Death Eaters to meet him at the graveyard in order to have a meeting to talk about everything that's going on and question their commitment and loyalty. Another famous snake symbol would be the Slytherin crest, and it is known to us that every dark wizard came from Slytherin, and a lot of the Slytherin traits are greatly intertwined with that of a dark wizard. So the Slytherin house in general is sort of a darker house out of the four, and I think that is really important to point out. The next symbol that I wanted to mention is actually a number, the number 3, which can represent a trinity of sorts, the harmony between mind, body, and spirit, the harmony between 3, which is portrayed through the Triwizard Tournament in general, which was designed to be a trinity, with 3 schools and 3 competitors and 3 tasks, all of which was disrupted when Harry's name shot out of the Goblet of Fire, creating 4 instead of 3, disrupting the Trinity in general. Which brings me on to the next symbol I wanted to talk about, which is the number 4, which can represent the 4 elements. The 4 elements being earth, water, fire, and air. Both earth and air you can see in the 3rd task with the maze itself representing earth, and the air, you can see that there is a large gust of wind, urging Harry and Cedric to touch the Triwizard Cup, which then transports them to Voldemort at the graveyard. And that scene in general, that graveyard scene, really showcases air because it's very eerie and sends a chill down your spine, almost as if there is some sort of breeze of some sort. You can see fire and water in the other two tasks, water being the second task with the merpeople and the large lake that they had to swim around in for an hour, and fire being in the first task, which is the fire-breathing dragons. Another way that this can be portrayed is through the four competitors and the four houses that they represent. Cedric and Harry both represent Hufflepuff and Gryffindor respectively, whereas Victor Crumb and Fleur de la Cour represent Slytherin and Ravenclaw respectively. And the last symbol I wanted to point out was rain, which can represent a change. Now, rain is first seen when Mad-Eye Moody appears at the castle. You can see here he is walking up to the castle and it is pouring outside. And another time you see that is when Mad-Eye Moody enters the Great Hall. The ceiling acts up and starts storming, and this is because Mad-Eye Moody is not actually Mad-Eye Moody. He is in fact Barty Crouch Jr., who is an outcast of this film. He has ulterior motives and is only here to make sure that the rise of Voldemort really happens. Mad-Eye Moody, however, plays this off, saying stupid ceiling, and Dumbledore trusts him because they had been friends for a long time. Another time that rain appears is on the day of the selection. You can see these students here running inside from the rain, and you can see that, they're just having a good time. They have no idea what's to come. They're just running in. And it's one of those filler scenes that seems unnecessary, but really portrays a secret message. And the last scene that I wanted to point out where rain was important was after the first class with Mad-Eye Moody. You can see Neville staring out the window at this stained glass window. You can see that it is raining outside. There is a specific raindrop on the window running down from the eye, almost like a tear. And this is important because it's really just confirming the change that Mad-Eye Moody's presence has on the school year in general, because it does show his different teaching style and the difference in staff than what the students are accustomed to. So the next archetype I wanted to talk about are character archetypes. So there are different character types with their own characteristics that are general guidelines for each type of character, and there are two that I wanted to point out today. The first one is the bully, which intimidates others. This is true of Draco Malfoy, who often tries to intimidate Harry through bragging about his seats that he got at the beginning of the film, and then trying to intimidate him by making sure he's aware that both him and his father don't believe in him and think that he won't last more than 10 minutes in this competition. Once that doesn't work, you can see that he struggles to pull out his wand to try and cast a spell on Harry with his back turned. On top of that, I wanted to point out the hero, who is the main character who may fulfill a task. This is Harry Potter, as he is the main character of this film, and he has to compete in the Triwizard Tournament, even though he didn't want to. This is the task that he fulfills throughout the film, and he does in fact complete this task. The next archetype I wanted to talk about was setting archetypes. Setting archetypes use scenery to convey feelings or messages, just like the maze in the third task. A maze can represent a puzzling dilemma or great uncertainty and a journey into the heart of darkness. This is true of the maze because mazes are puzzles in and of themselves, and you can see that these characters have a great uncertainty with where they are going, where they are traveling, with which turns to take, and what awaits them inside this maze in general. You can see that they are searching for the Triwizard Cup, but instead find a darkness within themselves they didn't really know existed and was buried deep down. And you can see the journey into the heart of darkness through the Triwizard Cup being a port key, transporting them to the graveyard where Voldemort awaits, which is the heart of darkness. The next setting archetype I wanted to point out was the forest, which is a wild and dangerous place that can sometimes contain dangerous beasts, which is true of this scene where Hagrid takes Harry to see the dragons for the first task. These are the dangerous beasts, and they chose a forest to do this scene because a forest is a very open place where there can be beasts lurking at any corner, and I think that they used the forest to portray more of an eerie, dark place, like a worrisome place. The last setting archetype I wanted to point out is fog, which can create uncertainty, which is very true with the maze scene. You can see it's very foggy here. They look very confused and unsure of what just happened and what is going to happen further on. They have no idea what awaits them, and you can see they are really unsure of what's happened, like what's going on. You can see Harry questioning himself, as in this scene, Cedric says to him, "For a moment there I thought you were going to get me, and you were going to let them get me," and Harry responds with, "For a moment, so did I." And you can see that this is very unusual for Harry. He is very unsure of why that just happened, and a little worried as well. The next thing I wanted to point out was plot archetypes. Now, plot archetypes are common formats used to tell a story. For example, the hero's journey, where the hero faces trials along the way to accomplish this task that he must fulfill. And this is a very common one used throughout many films, and it is used in this film to show Harry as he faces many tasks, including the Triwizard Tournament, and including Ron being mad at him. These are all trials that test him as a character, and it really shows that the main character can accomplish a lot of things because he does make it out of the tasks and actually wins, and Ron also becomes his friend again, and you can see that the main character really holds a lot of hero characteristics. The next one I wanted to point out was the task, which is something that must be done whether the character wants it to or not. This is represented by the Triwizard Tournament, which Harry didn't want to do, and once his name was chosen, he was part of a binding magical contract that he could not get out of. He had to participate even though he didn't want to. Another thing would be meeting Voldemort, which is something that was out of his control, something that Voldemort created the fate for himself, and this is something that Harry tried to deny, something that he really didn't want to happen, but of course Voldemort has a high level of influence and could get that to happen if he wanted to, and of course he did, and it happened anyway, and it was something that had to happen. The next theory I wanted to talk about was conflict theory. The first one being age, which is a big thing that keeps Harry separate from the rest of the champions. It causes him to get treated differently since he is the youngest competitor, and this showcases through the many students that make fun of him or boo him or things like that, where they did make buttons saying that Cedric rules and Potter stinks, and this is a big thing that first separates Harry, You can see here that he feels very left out. His friends have turned their backs on him, and he is by himself, which also showcases his mentor, Mad-Eye Moody, who was asked by Dumbledore to keep an eye on him, which also separates him because Cedric is another student of Hogwarts, and he is the only one without a mentor, which really shows that they treat their students differently based on age. He is also told by many people, including Rita Skeeter and many staff and students, that he's less prepared due to his age, or for his age, he can't do what the other students can do. And he's told that because of his age, he's someone that is not going to make it very far, which is very upsetting for him and makes him worry a lot. The staff are also very worried about Harry once they find out that his name was placed in the tournament. McGonagall suggests that they break the rules and not let him compete, and the only reason that they do was to see what was going on and why this was happening, to let the events unfold as Snape says, and Dumbledore agrees. The next one I wanted to talk about was blood ranks. The blood ranks are a main separation throughout the wizarding world in general, and it's often the unconscious motive for a lot of the problems that occur throughout the series. One of the main infamous people that really cares about blood ranks is Voldemort. They believe in purifying the ranks, him and his followers, and the motive for most of what Voldemort achieves and accomplishes is purifying the blood ranks, and you can see this throughout the film, how evil he has become due to this motive and this need to purify the ranks. And another person that has great influence about the blood ranks is Lucius Malfoy, who is one of Voldemort's main followers, who influences his son Draco Malfoy, bringing this purification for the blood ranks belief into the Hogwarts classrooms and school in general, which then influences Hermione, who is a mudblood and is always found needing to help her friends out, raising her hand in class, feeling the need for validation of some sort to prove that just because she's a mudblood doesn't mean that she's any less of a witch than any of the other students there. And you can see that this is a big thing for her, that she always feels the need to have the answers and to be able to be the smartest one in the room and to prove that she's more worthy than anyone else there. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I really enjoyed making it, and I really enjoyed rewatching the movies in a new way to really analyze the film and understand what was going on.